I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's Ron from The Truth About Addiction. Welcome. Today our guest is Jess Kennedy. She's a 37-year-old beautiful lady who works as a lived experience peer worker. So basically she helps people, which that's what we're all about. We're all about trying to help people and trying to show people that there is a better way and that someone actually cares and piss the stigma off about, once a junkie, always a junkie, and junkies are born with three heads and we've got no love and we've got no compassion and, and all that bullshit that, society gets fed from the media and from our government officials in a lot of ways. And, the ignorance is sometimes quite painful to see the ignorance of a lot of people. But anyway, Jess, welcome, Dolan. Thank you for
Thanks
coming
for having
on.
me, mate. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Just tell us your story, Jess, please.
Sure. So I started, so I'm 37 now. I started drinking when I was very young, probably about 10, 11 years old. Became a bit of a blackout drunk from about 14, which is normally a pretty key sign. You should not keep drinking, but carried on regardless. Pretty heavy alcoholism all the way through my early teens, all up into my early 20s. And somehow in the back of my mind, I always thought I should never touch drugs. I just sort of knew in the back of my head, I was like, if I start taking drugs, like, that will be a downward spiral for me. I won't be able to come back from. I think I always knew I was an addict. Something inside me always told me I was going to be. And then just one night, about 26 years old, in the toilets of a nightclub, someone pulled out some drugs, gave some to me, I took them, and that was the point of no return. So within about 3 or 4 years, I was broke, I was homeless, I lost my relationships. I had absolutely nothing to my name at that point. So that made me start my journey into recovery, which was a bit of a mix thing. I kind of jumped between sort of 12-step meetings to smart recovery meetings to working with people online, trying to craft my own path a little bit. And I did pretty well for the first 3.5 years. I stayed absent for 3.5 years. But I did nothing to help my my mental health, I guess. So while I was doing really well and not taking any drugs or drinking, there was a lot of emotion, a lot of anger, a lot of anxiety, a lot of panic building up in my mind, and to the point something really simple one day just made me snap, and I left work and I grabbed a bottle of vodka and I drank the whole thing in a train station toilet, very classy. Went on a 4-day bender, didn't come home. And then when I came home, my wife at the time dragged me to the doctor, and the doctor prescribed me some benzodiazepines, thinking that would be a good way to help me, and I took the whole packet, and that made me feel great, so I went and got another one, and then I jumped online and I ordered even more, and within 7 months I was completely addicted to benzodiazepines left, right and centre, so I could not stop taking them. So yeah, became a very heavily dependent benzodiazepine addict, majority of which were laced with things like fentanyl and anything under the sun. I was found passed out in the middle of Sheffield in the UK, and taken into hospital with an ambulance, told I'd had a seizure and an overdose as a result of the fentanyl-laced benzos that I've been taking. I was then put on a very strict reduction plan of trying to get me off benzos. So for those who aren't aware, you can't just stop taking benzodiazepines. You have to taper off of them very slowly, because if you don't, you will have seizures over and over again. So over the course of about 4 or 5 months, I had to slowly taper off the benzos, which was great, and I managed to do that. But as soon as they were out of my system, my problems in my head were still there. So I turned to cocaine, and I became a full-fledged cocaine addict, and that went on for about 3 or 4 years, to the point where I was taking it just to get up in the morning, taking it every hour at work, taking it by myself all night. I wasn't sleeping or anything. I lost my job again, got another one, lost that job. Then the start of the pandemic happened. I couldn't find any other job, but I could always find drugs because they were very easy to get during the pandemic. You could get cocaine delivered to your door quicker than you can get pizza. And then as the months went by, I became more and more isolated. I was overdosing every few weeks. Tried to take my own life. And in the end, in about April 2020, I sat on my kitchen floor one day and just thought, fuck, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm either going to die from taking these drugs, or I'm going to die from the people who I'm buying them from. There's no in between. So I reached out for help for some friends back in Australia. They helped me. They got me on the very last flight out of England into Australia before they closed the borders in the pandemic. And I had the wonderful experience of detoxing in hotel quarantine.
That would have been good.
Oh, look, nice comfortable bed, but it's not much fun having nothing but the cat team banging on your door every 4 hours, making sure you're not dead. That was about the extent of the medical assistance I was given. So, yeah, so it was a pretty crazy few years. Like, I look back on my life now and I just genuinely can't believe I'm still alive, you know? Like, it's funny, the other day I had to get some blood tests done because I had COVID and I've got like long COVID and I've been really exhausted. So my doctor was like, oh, we'll just do some blood checks. We'll check your liver and your kidney. And I'm like, oh, yeah, can't wait to see what comes back from that. And he's like, oh, no, perfectly healthy. And I'm just like, what the fuck? How? Like, how are any of my organs still running? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. But yeah, you know, so I came home, or I came out of detox. I took, a few months out and to kind of sort my head out. I saw a psychiatrist, and kind of explained to him what was going on, and he diagnosed me with what I assumed was already happening, which was that I had ADHD, which I was diagnosed with as a kid. So the cocaine and alcohol abuse was self-medicating a lot of that. I also had bipolar 1, which explained the many, many months I spent painting and repainting houses and starting businesses and taking out loans and doing all these crazy things I thought I could do and then forgetting about them. And I was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which has probably been the most debilitating, to be honest with you, of all of them. So that's something I'm working through. Post-traumatic stress as a recovering addict is a tricky path. You have to do really carefully. So, yeah.
Okay. Have you started your post-traumatic stress
I
disorder treatment?
have, yeah. So I have a great therapist. So it took me so I've been sober 2.5 years now. It took me 18 months of sobriety and being stable on my, my psychiatric meds and, feeling comfortable enough in my own sobriety that I felt I could approach it. And yeah, we started the process of going through that now using techniques like EMDR, therapy and just general talk therapy, to be honest with you. I have instances, I actually had one last week. I have instances where I have trauma related responses to things specifically around stress. So if something stresses me out and it's like my body just can't handle it, so I'll black out altogether. And then I won't remember anything I've said, done, did in those moments. And then I'll come out of those blackouts and people will tell me what I've done and I won't remember any of them happening. And that's it's a pretty scary thing to go through. I think when we drink and we get drunk and we black out, it's one thing, but when you're completely clean and sober, and it's a particular event that hits you and makes you black out in that post-traumatic stress, it can be really difficult to handle.
Yeah, wow. Okay, yeah, I had treatment for post-traumatic stress syndrome, 9 years ago. So I was 27 years clean.
Yep.
And I turned my nose up at any sort of treatment. You know, I'm an anti-treatment person,
Yep.
and it was one of the best things I ever did. Sounds crazy. I was 27 years clean, and I had a mate who was a master of it. He was one of the highest guys in Australia. He died. He passed away. The funny part is I helped him get clean.
Wow. Okay.
25 years earlier. I helped him get clean, and he went on to become, you know, one of the highest psychologists for the Probation and Parole Board of New South Wales.
Wow. Okay.
And he had a liver transplant because of his addiction, and I can talk because he's passed away. And then his new liver got attacked by the Hep C again, and he ended up by killing him. Yeah, but he was brilliant, you know. But he was a recovering addict, so I trusted him. And he said, "Just let's try it." And I'm like, "Oh man, this is all shit, you know. I don't know about this crap, you know." And he's like, "Mate, just what have you got to lose?" So I said, "All right, let's go on. Let's play. Let's play."
Yeah.
Because I'm a bit like that. Let's
Give
play.
us a game,
you know,
mate.
let's play. Yeah, you know. Entertain me. He entertained me, you know. And, you know, it sounds crazy. It was one of the best things I ever did. It was actually a really, really good thing. And I think it released a lot of stuff that normal. Look, I love 12-step programs, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot more to recovery
100%.
than 12-step programs.
Oh,
there's a lot more to recovery than putting down the drink or the drug or whatever we choose to have as our addiction.
Yeah.
The mental health part of our disease or our affliction or whatever you want to call it. See, I'm not into that philosophical bullshit about putting labels on stuff. What I'm into is I don't think correctly. My body's allergic to chemicals. You take the chemicals out, then we have a big problem.
Yeah.
The reason I took chemicals in the first place.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
100%. It's all about the journey that leads up to the person taking the drugs. That's how I explain it to, you know, my clients who come in and see me. I work for Turning Point in Melbourne, and we're like a drop-in service. So people just walk, you know, they stand where I once stood, mate. They stand at the door shitting their pants thinking I'm about to try and get help for something I don't even know if I want to get help for. And they come in and they talk to me and I'm like, come on in, I'm a massive addict. Let's talk about drugs. And we have a bit of a chat and they'll sort of, I'll ask them about themselves, you know, what they've done in their life, you know, how they grow up, how's their, you know, whatever, just about anything they're interested in, and just create like that instinct that, you know, you aren't just your addiction, you're the person behind you is who's important. The addiction is the end point. You're doing that because something has gone wrong, and you haven't been able to find a solution for it. And so drugs or alcohol or whatever that may be, or any other kind of addiction, that's the point that's helping you feel better. What happens after that can obviously be a road to turmoil. But when you recover from that and you stop taking it, then that's when the journey, I think, really begins, because you have to get back to that person you were before and or redefine the person you want to be moving forward.
100%. I know every client that I've dealt with, and every person I've dealt with in the last 41 years that I've been involved with, because I've been in this recovery game for 41 years, and I chose to pick up 36 years ago because I had all the answers, and I was just going to have a weekend, just have a weekend of using heroin, you know, like
see what would happen. I
can do it. And it took me 5 months. That weekend took 5 months, you know, and I'm one of the lucky ones that make it back. And I got on 120 mil methadone and jumped off that cold turkey back in 1986, where they had no idea that you can't come off methadone, 120 mil cold turkey. And I went to a detox. 10 days into it, they said, "Oh, mate, you've got to go.
Yeah,
we're not taking responsibility. We've got to put you back on a program, or you're going to die." And I went and slept on a mate's floor, and I got clean. I haven't used ever since. But what I've done with every person and myself is I make people write their life story.
Yeah.
So we can see where the changes, the turmoils, the cycles, and usually sometimes where the damage was caused. You know, like it's not relevant, but it's really important to understand that something went wrong somewhere. I wasn't born a lying, thieving junkie. It took years of practice to get to that guy. It took me years of practice to become that guy.
Yeah, you're exactly right though. People don't wake up in the morning and as a child and go, you know what? I'm gonna fucking take drugs for the rest of my life. That's what I'm gonna do. Absolutely no one does that. You get to that point and then you start taking drugs and you think, well, I'm never gonna be that person who steals. Because I'm not that kind of person. And then all of a sudden, you become that person who steals.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of just escalates and escalates. You set these bars for yourself in addiction that you just
Yep.
keep stepping on and just going over and over. And at the end of the day, it's not because you're an addict, it's because you're not well. There's a part of you that isn't well. And addiction is just part of somebody not being well. And that's
Yep.
what I personally want people to understand. So I feel like, with mental health, I think it's really positive that in the world today we talk about mental health as well as we do. I don't think people believe a lot of what they say about mental health and how much they believe in accept the mental health. When I tell people I have bipolar, I can assure you the look on their face is not what you would expect from someone who understands mental health. But people talk about it. But drugs and alcohol and addiction are like mental health's dirty little brother who no one really wants to look at or think about or appreciate is there. And there's a lot of stigma in the way of that. And it's really upsetting. And it's something that really needs to be dealt with because it's stopping people getting help.
Yep, 100%. That's why this podcast was born. This is why this company that I own started, because I'm the poster child for recovery, because I was still a criminal.
Yeah.
I still kept on doing everything you shouldn't do in recovery.
Okay.
I traveled the world.
Yeah.
I was a career criminal before I got clean. I stayed a career criminal after I got clean. I traveled the world. I've been married and divorced 4 times. I've been broke and rich and all that stuff, but I remained clean. Against all the odds. I went back to prison and served another 8-year sentence whilst in recovery.
Yeah.
And started a rehab in prison whilst I was in prison.
Yeah.
And got the support of the governor of the jail to assist me
in
opening a rehab in jail.
Yeah.
Because he just trusted me, and I've got references from him where he just unbelievable. He's a company in England called Serco.
Yep.
They're a massive giant company.
Yeah, I know Serco. Yeah.
He backed me. He backed me because he knew that I wasn't talking shit.
Yeah.
And you can't con a con.
No, that's it. Very true.
And this guy, he'd been in the prison system for 30 or 40 years. He'd seen all the cons. And when he met me, he said, he used to come down and have lunch with me in the jail unit that we had. We had 30 guys in it. Once a month, he would come down and sit down and eat at our table and say to me, what do we need to do, Ron? How else do we need to get this place working? How do what do these guys need? And I said, I want to bring a yoga teacher in. Okay. They started let me bring a yoga teacher in. We want our own food. We want to be able to cook our own food. We want our own nutrition. Okay.
Yeah, that's
we're completely isolated from the rest of the prison. Completely isolated. We never ever contacted anybody else no one else was allowed to come to our unit. No other unit. It was a drug-free unit.
Yeah, okay.
And he believed in recovery. And you know what? I wish society could be as open-minded as what he was. I believe, this is only a guess. I believe he had someone in recovery that he loved and
normally what it takes.
And lost, or somebody that was very close to him was suffering. Because most, as you know, addiction, I believe, is touching every family, even if they don't know it.
100%. The current statistic is approximately 1 in 4, probably somewhere between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 around Australia are affected by drugs, alcohol, or gambling. I mean, that is literally you're walking past people in the street. That's members of your family. That's friends of your friends. Like, it is everywhere, and it's just people are choosing to ignore it. The campaign that I'm involved in at the moment, which I think I sent you the YouTube link for. That's all about rethinking addiction and rethinking the stigma. And, there's a whole bunch of us heading up to Canberra in the second week of September where we're going to lobby the government and, stand on Parliament steps and go into, go into the government chambers and give them a piece of our mind and tell them that we need funding and how much this is affecting the country and all those kind of things, because just no one's listening. People are dying, and
Yep.
people are scared to get help because they're scared of the stigma. I have a client who has a cocaine addiction who only tells his friends that he has a gambling addiction because he's so scared of the stigma of having a drug addiction. Doesn't worry about being a gambling addiction, but he doesn't want people to know he's got a drug addiction. And that, to me, is a perfect example of the stigma that's around it.
Yep. I can tell you, and I won't tell you, but I can tell you people that I know who are very famous people say, well, I can't really go to the 12-step programs of Narcotics Anonymous, even though I'm snorting an ounce of coke every 3 days. I'll go to AA and identify as an alcoholic because it's sociably acceptable.
That's it. Yep.
And they go to AA and they don't relate.
No.
Because they're looking for the differences, not for the similarities. They don't relate. And then all of a sudden they're back out there snorting coke and drinking alcohol and going like, fuck it, this doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you're probably the same. Me, you've probably done every program under the sun. And in the end, I've just like to find my own path of what works for me and what doesn't. And what works for me is definitely focusing on my mental health. That's number one priority for me, because if I'm not mentally sound, then everything goes out the window. The second,
I say to everybody, same thing.
Yeah, second part for me is making sure that I have the right people around me, and the people who are positive, people who don't take my bullshit, because I can be full of bullshit, and I'm like you, I can talk my way in and out of whatever scenario I want to. I need people around me who can point that out and call that out on me and be like, you know what, no, Jess, you need to take a step back. And I need to look after my own like exhaustion levels and compassion fatigue levels and things like that, because I want to help people. My job is helping people. I get paid to help people, and I love that, and I'm so privileged to have that job. But I also have to draw a line around how much I help people outside as well. So whilst people come to me and ask for help, rather than sit there and weekly and speak to them about what's going on with them, I'll help direct them to the right service. I'll walk them into those services and walk them to where they can go and get some help. Because otherwise I'm very empathetic, but very much an empath. I'll take on everybody else's emotions, and then that often works to my own detriment as well. So, yeah.
100%. In your line of work, I sometimes go and talk to rehab workers about their own mental health and their own sustainability. And I say, well, what are you doing to sustain your own mental health? What are we doing to sustain your own emotional stability and your fulfillment, so that the job's no longer eating you? Because as we know, in this sort of work, I don't like using the word success rate.
No.
I don't believe, and this is where we have a lot of problems with governments and things like that. They want statistics.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm not a statistic person. How many percentage of the people that you see are remaining drug-free? Who cares?
Yeah.
If it's one, we're succeeding. If it's one, we're succeeding.
Yeah.
How much money do you put on a human life?
Exactly.
You spend $100 million in a war, in shit equipment in one day, and you ask how much is that? How much
Yep.
Is it going to cost us to keep these people? We at the moment are doing something with Correctional Services New South Wales, because they realise that their recidivism rate is so high that it's costing the taxpayers so much money. This is sad, that they're looking for an alternative to stop people from going back to prison. Now, that's recovery, because most people in prison today are drug-related.
Yeah.
But they're not worrying about the people. They're worrying about the cost of running their prisons.
Exactly.
So it's all wrong. It's not quite balancing out. Our priority should be the mental health and the well-being of the human being, not the cost on the other human beings that are better than the ones that are drug addicted.
100%, yeah, 100%. And it's just that misunderstanding around lapse and relapse as well, and that recovery. Someone who stops taking drugs and alcohol doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to go to a point in their life where they may have to take it again. Something might happen, they might get triggered, And if they do, that's okay. They just need to know they can come back and get help. But instead, there is a society that builds shame around people that fail when they haven't failed. They're just still not well.
Yep.
They just need to look at things in a different perspective. So for every client who comes in and speaks to me, in the first 5 minutes of speaking to them, I'll ask them if it's the first time, like, this is the first time I've ever come to get help. And I'll say to them, okay, look, relapse may not be a part of your story, but it is a part of a lot of people's stories. And I'll kind of try and not tell them that it was like a lot of my story, but like I'll be like, it can be part of a lot of people's stories. So I just say, if that happens, you come straight back in here and you come and see me and we deal with it then. Don't be ashamed. We'll still help you. Because otherwise people just go down the spiral of a path that just gets worse and worse and worse. And that's when people die. That's when they're at most risk, because they go back to the level of using that they were using at the first time, and their bodies are obviously not tolerant, and then things just get out of control.
Yeah. In 1987, I started a program. It was an NA meeting, and I called it the Boomerang Meeting.
Okay.
It was for people for relapse and recovery, because a lot of people used to come back to the 12-step fellowships and feel lesser and judged. So we opened a meeting for that reason, and we called it that. It was called the Recovery Relapse, just to take away the stigma that, as you said, relapse is part of some people's recoveries.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, but it is. And the reality is, to me, we strive for progress, not perfection.
Yeah, 100%.
And we talk about harm minimisation.
Yep, 100%. And I'm a big advocate as well, is that, recovery isn't linear. And, if you choose to recover from taking heroin, but your choice is to still smoke weed, it's not the end of the world. Do you know what I mean? If that is your path, that is your path, as long as you're doing things safely. If you're not ready to stop taking heroin, if you're not ready to stop taking amphetamines or anything like that, or GHB or benzodiazepines or anything along those lines, then let's look at things like pill testing, fentanyl testing strips, very basic things that can help people be safe while they're using. Carrying naloxone. I mean, the fact that naloxone is taken so long for this government to make naloxone free of charge and not easy to get is an absolute joke, because that completely saves lives. I carry so much of that stuff with me, and just give it to my friends. I might just put it in your bag. Just, you never know. If you see someone pass out in the streets, just shout out cops as loud as you can. If they don't move, probably naloxone them because they probably have an overdose. It's just very simple harm minimization tactics that can be done, that should really be educated amongst the public, in the school system, everywhere, because like we said, that 1 in 4, 1 in 5 amount of people are taking drugs and have a problematic use of taking drugs. That needs to be addressed, and it needs to be looked at seriously.
Yeah, I believe, that we really need to open our eyes and start to smell the roses, because you know what? Addiction's out there. Drug abuse is rampant in our world, not just this world, in our world. Even in prisons now, drug addiction's massive. Drug use is massive. They don't stop the drug use because you go to prison. You don't get as often as much, but you're still getting on, which is even more dangerous because, as you talked about before, the tolerance. But I think, I did a talk to the University of New South Wales last month, and one of the guys on it was an ex-cop, same age as me, and he was an old cop, and he said, well, what do you think, Ron? Do you think we should legalise drugs? I said, yes, 100%. 100%. And I used to be a drug dealer, so, I'd be cutting away my own business, if I was still working, which I don't. But I'm just saying, yes, I do. I think they should decriminalise drug use, and I think they should legalise it, and they should control it to take away the criminality.
100%.
And you know what? Half the kids wouldn't even use because it's not cool anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Half the kids get into it. Just get into it because they're rebelling against their family. They think it's cool.
Yeah.
They're rock stars and their goose idols are drug addicts and think, wow, how cool, I'm on the drug that killed River Phoenix.
Yeah.
Like, come on, motherfuckers, wake up and see what's really happening in our world. Stop
100.
putting your head in the sand and pretending it's like,
Yeah.
and those same people are going home and drinking 3 bottles of wine.
I'm thinking that's okay.
After work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that.
But I'm not a drug addict.
Yeah. No, I haven't got a problem. No, not at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's statistics now, very clear statistics out of Switzerland and Portugal that show the decriminalisation and legal supply of drugs it works. Like Switzerland haven't had an overdose. They can't even remember when they had their last overdose. And it's
crime rates dropped,
everything, and like the statistics are so clear and so obvious that it would just be such an embarrassing thing for the governments, especially the American government, to turn around and be like, oh, sorry, this 100-year war we've waged on drugs was actually a massive power play and a mistake.
Exactly.
Let's just forget about it. Well, they don't, it's just, it baffles me.
Yeah.
It baffles me. I watched an interesting talk with Johan Hari actually the other week. I don't know if you've seen The Fix. That he did, and that's like an incredible insight into the war on drugs, where it started at the moment, compared to how the actual world should be working, and how it does work in those two countries and works very, very well. And at the end of the day, I think the statistic, if I'm right, is that 92% of people can use drugs unproblematically. So they can pick it up, put it back down again. But then there's 8% of them, which is people like us, I guess, who do have a problem with them and do struggle with
100%.
them. And they're the people who need the help. But those 92% who can use them all the time and they go and pay for it legally, the money they use to pay for it then pays for the treatment for those 8% that need the help. And therefore, the government isn't having to dig into their pocket anymore, which obviously seems to be the biggest problem, and support the funding in order to help people like ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And I've agreed about that for a long time. For a long time I've just said, just decriminalise it, take the crime away from it, get the crime out of the drug addiction. And I'm serious. I started using drugs a long time ago, long before you were born.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I've been clean nearly as long as you've been born. But I didn't know about drug addiction. I knew the Rolling Stones were singing about brown sugar. Lou Reed was singing about heroin. David Bowie, everyone was talking about drugs, Rodriguez was singing Sugar Man, I have a company called Sugar Man, I opened a company, I called it Sugar Man Classics,
I love that.
Because that's what I grew up with, I grew up with that era where drugs were cool. And then the next era came along, and there was Kurt Cobain, and and it just keeps going and going and going, and our kids are looking for an identity. Because our society is not made to make perfect parents. My parents have all been defected. From the First World War through to the Second World War, through the Vietnam War to the Iraq War, like this. But we have men come back who are fucked up, traumatized out of control. You can't just go out and kill people on a daily basis
and come back
and have your best friend blown up, then come back and fit into society. I was talking to an SAS soldier who I'm doing a little bit of work with at the moment, and he said to me, I had 6 or 7 tours of Iraq. He said, and I came back, he said, every time I'd come home from duty, he said, I never bought a beer. So every time I walked into a pub, he said, all the beers are on me. He said, I'm an SAS soldier. I'm over there killing people every day. He said, I was a hero. He said, I didn't have to buy a line of Coke. I didn't have to buy any beer. I didn't have to buy anything. So everything was just laid out for me. He said, then when I retired, he said, I had no identity. I didn't know who I was. He said, all of a sudden, he said, I'm a superstar, a rock star.
Now I'm nothing.
He said, now I'm a nothing. He said, it was really, really hard to work out, who I was and what I was going to do. And, and he's done really well. He's a really good guy. But there's so many people that don't do well.
Yeah.
Now, that's why veteran services, they've got a massive problem with returned soldiers.
Yeah.
And the post-traumatic stress that they've gone through and the drug addiction is right through the returned soldiers. It's massive.
Oh, it's huge.
It's massive.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. You'd be seeing it in your work. They'd be coming into your work,
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I'm a vet.
Yeah, we get loads of vets, loads of Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander people, LGBTQ
all the
community.
traumas.
People just got intergenerational trauma that people just don't realise are catalysts for drug abuse. Because at the end of the day, all you want to do is get outside of your own head. And I mean, sometimes I sit back and I look at some of these people who've gone through what they've been through, and you almost get like addict imposter syndrome. Like where you hear what these people have been through and you're seeing what they're taking and you're like, oh Jesus, maybe I'm not that bad. But then you kind of have to have a bit of a reality check and go, well, no, actually, just because you didn't go through that doesn't mean that what you went through is, any better or worse or whatever. So it kind of always gives you that sort of reality check. But it all really comes back to support mechanisms around people when they've gone through traumatic events and they've not had that help to get through them. And people coming back from Vietnam, Iraq. I know people who grew up, whose parents were in those situations, and they grew up in family situations that didn't turn out that well. And at the end of the day, that's not their fault. It's not their fault. The government and around the world needs to do a lot better for those people, and they need to be prepared for those situations. That you can't just, you said, expect someone to go into a pub and shoot someone because that's their job, and then go home the next day, and be absolutely fine. That's no one is built like that.
I just think the saddest part is the lack of information and the lack of care that we give to people who are suffering from this rotten disease. And I call it a disease because you're uncomfortable with yourself. I haven't taken the drug for a long time, but my thinking can still be off track.
Yeah.
And I've got to maintain a rigorous program of my thinking. I haven't got a drug problem. I've got a Ronnie problem.
Yeah.
I haven't had a drug problem for 36 and a half years.
Yeah.
I have a Ronnie problem. My drugs have been a long time away, but I know that when I take drugs, it gets worse.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I fully understand that I'm allergic to chemicals.
Yeah.
Because once I take a chemical, I no longer give a fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once I no longer give a fuck, I'm dangerous to myself and to others.
That's it. Yeah.
Because I'm totally self-centered. I'm obsessive and compulsive. And I'm harmful to myself and others.
Yeah.
Because my self-worth goes down the drain. The first thing that goes out the window when I take any sort of chemical is my self-worth. Because I believe drug addiction is a form of self-abuse.
Yeah.
Active drug addiction is a form of self-abuse.
Yeah,
it's like slashing up.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me a long time to come to that realisation because I used to put, as we do, when I was a heroin addict, I was exclusive and, I looked down upon barber heads. Then I escaped from prison and I couldn't get any heroin because I was on the run and I started shooting up barbs.
Yep.
So I looked down upon the alcoholics. And then I was in prison and I drank telephone disinfectant and home brews. So then I had to look down upon somebody else, the slashers. I've got to look down at the self-harmers now. And then I realised by doing what I call life stories, I realised that I've been self-harming for a long, long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And mine's based on trauma. I grew up in a gangster family. I'd shot my first man at 17. So I already had all this trauma. I had my own war. I didn't have to go to Iraq or Iran or Vietnam.
Yeah.
I had my own war in my own city, but in my own head, because I knew right from wrong. Even as a little kid, I'd be sitting in police stations. I knew right from wrong, but I wasn't going to admit shit. I wasn't going to admit that I was wrong because I was brought up to never admit.
Yeah.
So it was so hard when I got clean to admit that I had a problem.
Yeah.
The old saying is, I wouldn't even tell the dentist what tooth to pull.
Yeah,
I wouldn't tell no one nothing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust men don't cry. All the lies that we've told as as children, it's just bullshit.
But I
You
find
know?
it interesting, like listening to your story and comparing it to mine is really a perfect example of how much this disease and how much addiction does not discriminate. Because I grew up in a white, middle class, privileged family, very shiny on the outside, but a lot of emotional trauma on the inside that people didn't see. So I was never allowed
Yeah.
to show emotion as a child. You know, like if I was sad or I was angry or I was whatever, I was told to stop. So I wasn't allowed to feel anything. So when you're not allowed to feel anything, it just builds and builds and builds.
Mm.
And you know, and as I got into my teenage years and I became like, angrier at school and angsty and acted out, that was just looked down upon within my family. My whole family's perfect. You know what I mean? They're a white, perfect family. And then you've got me, the youngest one of the bunch, covered in tattoos, who's a drug addict, who's got mental health issues, who's had to be flown from country to country to get out of like near death situations. And, so like, I've never been to jail. I've never been in a criminal family, and I've never been involved in the criminal system apart from buying drugs from some very dodgy people. But I think our stories, even though they're completely different, just show to you that like this disease does not discriminate, like at all. You don't have to have grown up in a gang family. You don't have
Yep.
to have grown up in poverty. You don't have to have grown up wherever. You can be a very normal white kid growing up in suburban Melbourne, Australia, and still become a drug addict. And that's what people
100, yep.
that's what people don't understand.
And our emotional trauma and our feelings and our thoughts are exactly the same. We still felt like we weren't worthy. We still felt like our family would be better off without us. We still felt like a failure. We still felt different. We still felt all this stuff was exactly the same, irrelevant of where we came from. And that's the common denominator with addiction.
Yeah.
And this is why I treat so many people from different walks of life. And every one of my programs is catered for that individual, but they all come back to the one thing. Their mind is their problem.
Yeah.
Their thinking is their problem. I don't care what you take. Because I deal with some people who are gamblers, sex addiction, doesn't matter what your addiction is. It's all the same. It's all the same paint, just painted with a different brush.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
And I say it all the time, the disease lives in my brain, recovery lives in my heart. Or your soul, whatever you want to call your heart and your soul. My heart and soul is the one place. When I'm in pain, I'm not in pain in my head. I'm in pain in my heart.
Yeah.
When I'm insane, why do you think most people shoot themselves in the head when they kill themselves?
Yeah.
They want to shut the noise up.
Exactly.
People hang themselves. Why? To shut the noise up, to separate the head from the body.
Yeah.
It's just common sense that suicide is a way of getting out of whatever situation you think you're in. You're trying to detach the brain from the body. You're in pain here. The pain's coming from here. Let's separate it. So what we try to teach is to control this so that this thing has a better place to live.
Yeah.
So I say to them, you do not listen to your thinking. My greatest tool is that I understand how people think.
Yeah.
You tell me how you feel, and I'll tell you what you're thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you tell me what you think, and I'll tell you how you're feeling.
Yeah.
Because I understand the difference, that goes on in your head. If you live in tomorrow, you're going to be full of anxiety and fear because you have a vivid imagination.
Yeah.
And either it's a positive or a negative imagination. If you're living in anger and resentment, you're living in yesterday's.
Yeah.
And if you're living in yesterday, you're wasting your time. I've got a saying, if you've got 1 foot in yesterday and 1 foot in tomorrow, you're going to shit all over today.
Perfect.
I've always said that,
That's perfect. But that's absolutely true.
I've always said that.
Yeah, absolutely true. Living in the present is the most important thing. And I'm learning that you can't not only control what's going to happen next, is that you also can't control how other people feel or how they react or how their journey goes.
Yeah.
And that's always something I explain to the clients that I speak to at Turning Point is I'll be like, I don't know how to deal with my mum and dad. I don't know how to deal with my brother. And I'm like, well, you can't deal with them. I said, because that you're going on your journey with your addiction. I said, but they've also got their own journey with your addiction and their own pain and their own things. And you all have to set your own boundaries. And eventually it'll all come back together. Maybe it won't, maybe it will. But, you've got to be able to focus on you and what you're going through right this very second, and one very second at a time. And then worry about tomorrow when you get to it. Because
they call it the present for a reason.
Spot on. Yeah, spot on.
It is the present because it's a gift. If you can learn to stay in the gift in the moment, your life becomes a very easy life.
Very true.
Also, for me, I try to explain to people, I can't change you. I can change the way I react to you. If I can't change the way I react to you, then I can change you by getting rid of you. I say to people that work for me, over the years, mate, I can't change you, but I can change you. And they go, what? I say, if you don't start doing the job this way, you're fired.
That's fair.
So if I can change you by getting rid of you, by taking you out of my life. I never spoke to a sister for over 30 years. I never spoke to my father for over 30 years because they affected me badly. My sister was still in active addiction, died in active addiction.
No, I'm sorry.
And every time I'd see her, she would hurt my heart because of her disease was so strong, and she had so many issues. God love her.
Yeah.
God rest her soul. But oh man, wherever she is, she'll be driving her mad. Whether she's in heaven or hell, I don't care who she's with. They'll be going like, "Oh my fucking God, what? How did we get this one?" She was a beauty. She was a one-off. But
you're right with family and stuff as well. Like I've had to make, especially recently, some very difficult decisions around cutting off members of my own family, knowing full well that they're triggering people within me. And I can't have people around me who make me feel less of a person than I know I am. And for that reason, those people cannot be in my life. So I've had to make those decisions recently and be like, look, I'm sorry, but because of X, Y, Z, I can't have you around me anymore. I wish you all the best, but you're no longer part of my life. And it's hard, but, even 2-3 months down the line, I feel 10 times better than I did before. And so I know I've made the right decision. And I think that's something that a lot of people have to come to terms with. And that can be really, really hard, as you know.
Yeah. See, that just takes courage. And courage is faith. Courage is doing what you don't want to do. I say to everybody, being a hero because you want to run and do something is not being a hero. Going in and doing it because you don't want to do it, then you're being a hero. Yeah. And the same as integrity. If I'm driving down the street and I've got an icy pole stick in my hand and I'm in the middle of the bush and I go to throw the icy pole stick out the window and I go, nah, and I put it beside the car, that's integrity. Yeah. Integrity is not telling everybody how wonderful I am and all the good things I do. The integrity is doing stuff that nobody else knows about. Yeah. And I say to people, it's important to have integrity. It's important to have courage. And it's important to have some self-worth, because I don't use today because I don't believe that I deserve to punish myself. I don't cheat on my wife because I don't like the way it make me feel. Not because I don't want to cheat, not because of any other thing like that. It's because why would I do that to myself? Why would I lie to myself like that? Why would I, be so terrible to myself that I feel shame and guilt and remorse and all those things afterwards? I don't want that no more. I've had that life. Yeah. And it didn't serve me well. Yeah. This being honest and having integrity is a really, really nice feeling. It's a slow journey, but, we can all have it. Yeah. We can all have it.
Some people don't enjoy it, though, when you're that honest with them. But at the end of the day, you know what? We're going to do what we've got to do for ourselves to keep ourselves sober and away from our addictions and keep ourselves safe. That's the most important thing. And that way we can help others. Yeah. And I think that's what's really important in this game, is that actually helping others just comes really naturally. You don't have to do it, but naturally, by speaking openly about what you've been through, means that you are helping someone because you know that you're not alone.
Yeah. This is what this whole business of mine is about. My business is about helping other people. It's about living a legacy of kindness, understanding, forgiveness, and love. Yeah. That's what I don't know about gods and all that stuff, but the people say to me, what's your higher power? I say love, understanding, forgiveness. The 3 things I needed most as a child that I didn't get. Yeah. The 3 things that I wanted so badly as a child was love, understanding, forgiveness. And I need the love, I need the understanding, and I need the forgiveness, because I'm a human being first, I'm a male second, I'm an addict third. Yeah. As a human being, I'm flawed, I make mistakes. As a male, I have an ego, which sometimes can get out of control and get me into trouble. You know, and as an addict, I'm compulsive and I'm obsessive and I'm self-centered. So I have to treat all those things accordingly. But I'm a human being first.
Yeah.
And as a human being, I say this a lot, and people sometimes. My wife asked me the other night. She goes, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "I'm a human being now, not a human taking." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, now I'm being a human."
Yeah.
She said, "Before when I was using, I was just a human taking. I never gave anything back, you know."
Yeah.
Now I'm being a human, you know, and a human being is supposed to love, care, nurture, protect, and do all those wonderful things, you know. We're supposed to, you know, and as a male, you know, I believe I'm here to, you know, look after my family.
Yeah.
You know, I'm here to put food on the table, you know. It doesn't mean my wife can't work. My wife works her ass off.
Yeah.
You know, my wife works as hard as I do. You know, we have an incredible partnership, you know, you know, relationships are give and take.
100%.
It's not you do this and I do that, you know.
Yeah.
You know, her voice is as loud as mine. Her rights are as right as mine.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. Absolutely. The open communication is so important. Like my wife and I have the same thing. You know, like we communicate very, very well with each other, and we very, very rarely fight. I mean, she'll put me in my place. I need to be put in my place. But you know, we are able to talk through 99% of the things that we see as a problem, and because we can talk them through, then they're not a problem anymore. And when I was in active addiction, that was not something I was ever able to do. So
yeah, no, it was my way or the highway.
Yeah.
In addiction, it's my way or the highway.
Yeah, I'm better than everyone else. Yeah. I am. Yep, I don't care what you think. I don't care about this. It's like I'm better than you. That's all you think the whole time. It's yeah.
And the reality was, I'm afraid, and I'm a little boy, and I'm going to act tough to prove that I can show you that I'm bigger and better and tougher and meaner and all that bullshit. You know, when really deep down inside, people have trouble when I say it. I was just a scared little boy. My whole life.
Yeah.
I was a scared little boy. And today I'm not scared.
No, that's it.
Because fear is replaced by faith. For me, I have faith that just for the day I'm okay. Just for the day, if I do what I did yesterday, I'm going to stay clean.
Yeah.
Just for the day, I'm not going to harm anybody. And just for the day, I won't pick up no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what. At the end of the day, for me, it's all about not picking up one day at a time.
Yeah.
Because once I pick up, I can no longer guarantee my behaviour.
Yeah, that's 100% true. And I find that concept sometimes really difficult to explain to people who have never seen me in active addiction. So, especially living in Australia, so majority of my addiction happened, well, my addiction began in Australia, but it became a problem when I lived in England. And when I asked for help and came home, people saw me detoxing and saw me obviously not very well. But they never actually saw me using, and they didn't see the person I was when I was using, the person who scrounged around, the person who stole money, the people who did whatever they had to do. They never saw that, and I think sometimes it can be hard to explain to people why I have to do the things I do to protect myself in order not to use, because they never have actually seen me using. So I often have to explain that to people, which is okay, and I'm happy to do that. But I can understand why that would be difficult for some people who have never seen me in that state. Understand? Does that make sense? Like it's sort of
100%. I wrote a book while I was in prison last time about my life story, and it finished in 2022. That's where the book finishes.
Yeah.
And I have older daughters. I have 39-year-old twin daughters, and they tried to read the book and they couldn't read it. My wife, who's a lot younger than me, she tried to read my book and she couldn't read it because they said, we don't see the guy that you're writing about. We don't know who this person is. Like, this is not who we know. Yeah. Because my children have never seen me drunk or stoned. My 39-year-old twin daughters have never seen me out of it. Yeah. You know, they're like, all this jail and violence, and you know, they see me go back to jail. I went back to jail at 16 years clean, which I'm not proud of, but that's my story and that's what happened. Yeah. So, you know, I don't cry victim for anything, you know. I take responsibility for my actions, my reactions, and my inactions, you know. Sometimes I should have done things I didn't do, and which caused me pain and put me back in prison. But I don't justify it, and I accept that it was part of my journey. And then there's a crazy part of me that goes, well, a lot of people got clean by me going to prison, so maybe that was my higher power as well.
Things happen for
You
a
know, who
reason, don't
knows?
they? So
Who knows? Everything happens for a reason. You know, you're on this podcast today for a reason,
that's
Jess.
it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I believe that. You know, you reached out to me and it was really nice, you know.
Thank
You
you.
know?
Yeah.
But as I said, you know, we are what we are, but we are what we are today. We're not our past.
Nah.
We're not our past. And we can, you know, make a better future by what we do today.
Yeah.
So it always comes back to today. You know, today's the only day I have. Today's the only day I can guarantee that just for the day I won't pick up, just for the day I won't harm somebody, just for the day I'll be a loving dad, just for the day I'll be a loving husband, just for the day I'll be a good human being, and just for the day I'll be nice to Ron. You know, I'll do things for me too.
Yeah.
It's important to do things for myself.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely.
Because we forget about ourselves and we become martyrs, and that's not. I'm not a martyr.
Nah, exactly.
That's
Yeah. And it's just,
I'm a human
there's
being.
a lot of us who are in recovery are very similar, that we constantly feel like we have to help other people, like regardless of what that help looks like, whether it's because they have addiction or because they have mental health problems or because they're sad or whatever, we feel like we have to help them. But really, sometimes we have to look after ourselves first, because if we're not okay, then we can't help anybody else.
100%. That's 100%. That's, you know, I say that all the time, and I say it in a really sarcastic way sometimes, because some 12-step programs go, the most important person is the newcomer. And I say, no, they're not. I am.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not well, the message I'm carrying is the disease.
Yeah.
So it really, in fact, I'm the most important person to me in this place.
Yeah.
And that's just, you know, that's my belief. My cat's just come to say hello to me.
That's, I can hear my dog barking in the background. So
yeah.
Well, look, I mean, at the end of the day, like 12 steps, smart recovery, whatever journey people want to take, it's completely up to them. I just don't want people to think that things like the 12 steps are the only way to go, because they're certainly not. Like,
they're not.
Everyone's got their right to choose the right way to go, and if something's not working, then do a bit of research and look around, find people like you and me online, and we'll be happy to help, you know.
Yeah. Mate, look, you just got to find somebody who's a mentor, someone who listens to you. Sometimes people just need to talk. They don't even need to be told.
Yeah.
They just need an outlet. They need to get that madness out of their head. You say to me, if I'm treating you and you tell me, how are you, mate? I'm confused. I say, okay, because you've been trying to work something out.
Yeah.
You're confused because, and I say, if you're trying to work it out, you haven't got the answer. Because if you had the answer, you wouldn't have the question.
Yeah.
So tell me what you need to know and let's work it out together.
Yeah, 100%.
Even when I work with people in recovery, I say, help me, help you. We have to help each other, because I'm going to help you help yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not doing it. You've got to do it.
Yeah.
I can show you where to dig. I can show you where to dig where the gold is. I can give you the shovel. But if you don't pick the shovel up, it's not where the bucket full of pee.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You've got to do the work.
Yeah.
You've got to do the work, you know? I'll show you. I'll put the cross on the ground and say, dig there. Dig right here, and you're going to find gold, brother. But if you don't pick up the shovel, don't whinge to me about not finding the gold.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing
You
advice.
get out of this world what you put into it, darling. You know yourself, you know.
Yeah.
You only get out of this world what you put into it.
100%. 100%, I agree.
Jess, it's been really lovely chatting, darling.
You too, mate.
I wish you all the luck in your future, and anybody who's been listening to this, I hope you get something out of our chat. As I said, our whole program is about trying to help people. Our program is about carrying a message of hope, and that there is a way out. You know, once a junkie, always a junkie is bullshit. That's not true. You know what I mean? We can get through this. You know, if you need support, you know, you can contact me through, you know, the truth about addiction. Jess is always available. I'm sure you know you can chase Jess up. Hopefully we chat again, Jess. Be safe.
Yeah, you too, mate. Speak to you soon.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.